Hi, and thank you for watching TargetedWest.com. My name is DJ Chris. I'm your moderator and host. It's Sunday, the 11th of June, 2023, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm in Lodi, and we're doing a interview call tonight. It is show number 63, and we're interviewing Griffen, and he'll be talking about V2K, BCI, job sabotage and such, and he'll be on the call today, and he's waiting right now. Hello, Griffen. How are you? Come on in.
Hello, how are you? Nice to be here.
Good. So you emailed me, and we got a hold of each other, and you emailed your story to me, and it was incredible, and we thought it would be a great idea for you to come on and talk. So tell us about your story.
It's probably one for the books, I will say that. So my name is Griffen Herchko. I live out in Columbus, Ohio, and I literally have a targeting story that's pretty mind-blowing. It all started in 2018 when I started dating a flight attendant with American Airlines by the name of Candace Torian, got introduced to her family, and started to a relationship with her. But what ended up happening was her brother, an aerospace engineer, Nathaniel Stephen Torian, wasn't too happy with the fact that me and Candace were dating, and I got in the middle of a family problem, which they were dealing with illegal stolen merchandise that Candace had stolen and her roommate had stolen, and they needed to move it. And I was just now newly living inside of the apartment where they lived. So one thing led to another. They all came to the apartment, tried to get me out. I didn't leave. So the police were called. The police ended up telling them to leave. And sure enough, 4 hours later, Nathan comes into the apartment with Laren. They plant a little plastic case of baking soda in the kitchen, and then they run out the door. And the next thing I hear is somebody talking to me out of nowhere, like literally a faint voice that I can literally hear and perceive. And it's basically telling me that I'll be in trouble for drug possession if I don't leave the house. So I'm pretty much blown away by this entire process. I really was. I wasn't too scared. I wasn't too worried. I thought it was kind of trivial at the time because I didn't really understand the impact inside of the nation, or I didn't know all of these targeted individual stories. I just figured, with my 20 years of audio engineering and design, that this is just something new that they have. It's something to be expected from a guy that works in the aerospace industry. I didn't listen, and that's when this system actually was able to produce pain. So headache, sharp eye pain, a heating sensation on the bottom left of my foot. None of it was over the top. It was just enough to scare the crap out of me, and I called the police again. From this interaction, I began this slow descent into what is this whole targeted individual experience. I was left alone for almost a year. Literally no problems whatsoever. Me and Candace continued our relationship. She didn't want to talk about anything. But one thing led to another, and I made the mistake of being unfaithful and cheating on Candace. So I do regret that. But in this moment, I became caught by this group of individuals. When I woke up the next morning with the other woman in my bed, I literally could hear them talking to me. So this problem, it became aware to me that I got caught. I knew that they caught me. I didn't want to confess to Candace. So I just figured I'm just going to straighten up, fly right, treat Candace with respect, and keep moving on with, our relationship. And that worked for some time, but I guess I expired on the time limit that they were going to give me, and then they started to come back and pressure me with the system again. So, you would hear like cheater, or, you need to confess to Candace what you did, and you need to end this relationship. I mean, it was just these beratements. And these beratements would last maybe a couple of hours, and then they would stop. They'd give me several days, and then the beratements would start again. And this process started to cascade down, finally to the point where I was attacked to the point where I got so scared. Candace flew me out of the state because she knew I was being attacked, but she didn't know why, because I didn't want to tell her. But they flew me out of the state. I went to Columbus, Ohio, to seek medical attention from the Ohio State University. I wanted to get an MRI because I was being told that my brain was being melted, and then I was also being told or feeling pain. I had no idea that they were just, it wasn't actually doing any damage. It was just a sensation. But coupled with the threat, it produced a lot of fear. And it scared me. And yeah. So the hospital stay did not go well. As with anybody that's dealing with this type of problem, if you walk into a hospital and you start telling people that you can hear a voice, that you can talk back to a voice, that someone is attacking you, unless you're the CIA doctor, which when in 2021 on national television, he went down to investigate Havana syndrome and came back, attacked with Havana syndrome. It's not going to be believable to just a guy that's a normal somebody. But these processes kept happening. I got locked up for 30 days by the hospital, stayed of the ward, and then I literally had to change my tune immediately. Now I'm in Ohio. The attacks went away. Me and Candace stayed in connection, and then I moved back to Candace again, continued my relationship with her, and then the attacks started again. And this process kept compiling and compiling until finally they were able to torture a confession out of me. I couldn't deal with it anymore. It really can get rugged. I really do understand what these other individuals, when I'm reading the Twitter accounts and they're talking about the sleep deprivation and they're talking about the pain and they're talking about the voices, it completely makes sense to me. The only problem with this entire situation on their end is it was done somewhat lackadaisical. I believe that they rested too much on the technology and they didn't really think that I was capable of understanding how this entire process works. And they pulled a couple of stunts on airliners, which is where the entire dynamic of the targeting experience changed. So on board commercial airliners at 40,000 feet, traveling over 1,000 miles at 670 or 650 miles an hour, I'm able to talk to somebody without moving my mouth, and they're able to talk back to me. Now, looking at how this could even occur, other than saying, oh, you're having a delusion, it started to dawn on me that this technology, all it's really having to do is bridge a connection somehow between the body and that antenna system. So that being said, at 40,000 feet, cell towers, in my mind, became ruled out to a certain degree because cell towers don't fire up into the air. A satellite system, while probably capable of doing something like that, did not exactly fit the bill with Nathan Torian. Yeah, he's an aerospace engineer, but the first time I got attacked with this guy was he was trying to move stolen property, and I really doubted at this point that this guy was calling the Pentagon or some satellite system and having it put on me and used in that way. So that really didn't make sense. So my conclusion, after looking into this even further, was somebody was on the plane with me. So from that, I actually started the process of going into and looking to acquire the flight manifest information for a few flights that I had taken where this communication system was able to be used. And this began a process that completely changed my targeting experience. So once I started to dig, a man literally burst into my restaurant where I worked, threatened my life, literally told me to not pull the flight manifest information, don't go after it, and then left the building. My manager ends up calling the police. The police end up looking for the guy. They're dispatched in the area. Everybody witnesses to it. The whole thing went down. And then the next day, I went down to the police station and gave an official statement as to what was going on. At that time, there really wasn't enough evidence to get the police to mobilize. It's just they're not going to go after this whole major conspiracy theory is what they want to call it, but it just seems a little far-fetched for them. So I was left with having to try and acquire that information. The only ways to get it were the police had to issue a subpoena during an investigation to American Airlines, which they did not want to do, or I would have to sue the airlines, or in a way sue for the flight manifest information and show for it, which would be costly. Literally, it would have costed me a lot of money. So my way to solve this problem was I will just get a career with the company that has the information. And it worked. Within a month of that man walking into my restaurant, I was able to find an opening, which is absolutely rare. But I was able to find an opening with American Airlines for the flight attendant position. And then I went through the process of passing all the tests and having them do all of the, how are you with customer service? How would you deal with this situation tests? All of the personal, emotional quota tests. I passed all of that. Then I got into the interview rounds where I had to go up against other candidates who were all going after the job, went through that entire process and beat them all out. Finally, through their second to last selection process, they weeded out everybody, and then I got a call, and they said they wanted me. I had literally done what I considered to be impossible, but my targeters also freaked out because they realized that I had actually done something that they had never even thought was going to be possible. How is this guy, who were claiming to be crazy and were claiming, is homeless? Some of the things that Nathan Torian would say about me is that I'm a meth addict, or that I'm a homeless loser, or, I'm a nobody. But here I am now being seen by a respectable company as their number one pick for candidacy. So I went out and got my passport. Once I had the passport, American Airlines, they scheduled me, they set me up, and they wanted me to fly out on the 16th to do a morning interview with them and see about hiring me. Well, I knew that as this was coming forward, I ended up changing my flight data from the 16th to the 15th. I wanted to fly in the night before, and I wanted to have time inside the city. So I didn't tell anybody about that. My parents knew about that, but that was about the end of it. That was just right there. But on September 13th, seeing that this was all coming into play, I literally began to receive death threats. So they were literally telling me through radio frequency.
Through your communication V2K, right?
Yeah, through V2K.
Okay, go ahead.
So, voice pops into your head, and you just have to deal with whoever's talking. So, listen, we're going to kill you if you get on the plane. Don't get on the plane. It's not worth it. The whole concept at this point was to sell me on the fact that we're going to hurt you, and it's not worth it. You know what you did to Candace. We're punishing you for it, and this needs to end now. We've let this go too far, blah, blah, blah. I really didn't care at this point because I knew the family. I knew Candace. I lived with her at her parents' house for 7 months. I knew Nathan. There are a lot of things, but I don't believe that they're murderers. So, and at this point, with all the hoopla that I had generated, it didn't seem likely that they were going to actually go through with the threat. So, I did my due diligence. I called the FBI, told the FBI my flight information. I let them know that there could be trouble at the airport. And then after I was done with the FBI call, I called over to Nathan's uncle, Stephen Manship, who is quality control manager over at In-N-Out Burger. He's one of the higher ups over there that does quality control. And I basically told Steven, I'm getting death threats. I know Nathan's involved with it in some portion. It's not the fact that he's doing it, but he's the one that got me turned on to this whole attack. So it's his friends or his colleagues or somebody else in the family that's doing it. I never got a response back from Steven. And 2 days went by, and I attempted to board the aircraft. Went to the airport. I had a 12:32 p.m. flight out from Columbus, Ohio to Dallas to the headquarters. And on the morning of that flight, I was arrested. I was literally arrested trying to board the aircraft. Now, at this time, I did not know why or what was going on. I was completely bewildered. My career was just shot down. My ability to have more income was just shot down. And my ability to get with the company that held the flight manifest information was completely derailed. What ended up occurring is that the Torians knew about a secret indictment warrant that I had stemming from 2015, because I had said some things while I was dating Candace that apparently got through some network and made it to the other side. So on that morning, or after I got out of jail because I made bail, I started to ask the police questions like, hey, why was I arrested? What's going on? And what it turned out was, on the morning of my flight, Candace Torian picked up the phone herself, and she called over to the Irving Police Department and talked to Detective Tuning. And she, out of the blue, started saying that I was violating a restraining order against her. So I hadn't talked to this girl in months. I had literally cut her off of the communication spectrum. But on that day, she literally was saying I was, violating the restraining order. Detective Tuning was, he took the response. He took it seriously, but he was like, well, I'm not going to do anything today. It's like, has he called you today? Has he said anything to you today? Has he, and all the answers were no. So it didn't stop me from boarding the plane. What ended up happening next is a third-party caller called into the CRAA, which is the airport police at John Glenn International Airport. They wouldn't give their name or their information, and they absolutely dropped to the police that I had this warrant and that I needed to be picked up and be arrested. And that process is what actually got me to not board the aircraft. But when the state finally looked at all the charges, they dismissed them. So the charges were pretty heavy. I was looking at 10 years prison time if I was going to be convicted, under what they were charging me with. But after the state actually reviewed the case, they just decided to dismiss the case. The evidence wasn't there to support that I was the, criminal. And this ended up being a massive blow to their side, because instead of going to prison and not being able to communicate or find out what happened, not being able to, uncover, I was able to do it. I was able to look with the police, FOAI information. I found out that Candace made the call. I found out another third party made the call. I found out that the only way that they would have known to do that on the 15th is if there was some sort of illegal surveillance. And once I was armed with this information, I just said, heck with it. I'm going to publicly start ousting this family and start talking about this. And this is where things started to heat up. So Nathan, trying to get ahead of this, started contacting the police, saying that I was doing all of these horrible things, stalking his family. And the police looked into it. He said that I had illegally acquired all of his contact information. He said that I had illegally gotten a hold of his phone numbers for his family. But when the police ended up calling me, because they did an investigation, they were just like, well, Mr. Herchko, how did you end up with all of these people's numbers? And it was just like, well, I lived with the family. I dated the girl Candace for 3 years. And her phone and my phone were all synced together. I have the entire family's list. Plus I went to this guy's wedding. It was a COVID wedding, so I was internet. But, I lived there. I know these people. And they're like, well, it sounds like that everything's okay, so the police weren't able to move anything forward with anything. Nathan then sees that I'm still talking about this and building a case and starting to get a lot of attention. I had over 40,000 hits on my Quora page. And Nathan starts to freak out to the point where he ends up dialing 911. He tells the phone operator that I have literally lost my mind, that I'm having a psychotic break. The police end up getting dispatched to my family's house. They show up. The police find that there's absolutely nothing wrong with me, and they actually admit that it was a swatting call or a prank call. And after this, he then called over to the police and asked for a report to find out what happened. He was actually looking for this information. Then he runs to the Pasadena Police Department, or the courthouse, and he then tries to admonish my name in court or, make me look bad. And he lies to the court officials, and he presents falsified documents stating that I was harassing him and calling him when, in fact, it was on the day that, he was actually contacting me. So we get wrapped up in this entire civil harassment case. This is where we're at right now with the felonies of perjury, the felonies of falsifying information. We're looking at the false reporting, the alarm. It's really a big mess. But the entire thing bleeds all the way back to the attack. So now, armed with all of this information, I'm finally sitting on a precipice where I can deliver a message to the police and to the community that's a little easier to believe. It's not just that I'm hearing voices or that it's a random attack. I actually have movement from the other side where they have attempted to, squash the story and silence it. So that's where we've kind of built up to.
Very good. It's a great story so far. Thank you so far. Continue.
Now, as far as the targeting of people, the equipment that makes this possible, because it's a communication system, first and foremost, I would really like to talk about how it is that this thing works. There's a lot of concepts inside of physics, a lot of concepts inside of antenna theory that are hard to understand and that people are getting things mixed up. And there's a lot of technology out there that mirrors it, like directed energy weapons, which is energy, but it's not necessarily always going to be this type of targeting. Yes, you can get a radar gun, an old radar gun from a 1990s police station, and if you get that thing and you point it up against the wall and start pulling the trigger, you can actually cause problems to your neighbor next door. But we're not talking about that type of energy with this system. So in layman's terms, I'm going to break this down. The first concept that people really need to understand is that an antenna is a structure. It is an object. So I'm going to use a 1980 cell phone, for example. It's a big brick, and it's got that thing sticking out of it. And everybody can point to that thing, and they call that an antenna. But what people don't realize is that what that antenna emits, an electromagnetic radiation that comes off of that antenna, is also the antenna. So when you look at an antenna, you're not really just looking, you're looking at the part that you can see, but you have to realize that that antenna goes miles out into the world. And all of that is also the antenna. When an antenna touches electromagnetic radiation, and it doesn't matter where it is or what it is, that radiation causes a disturbance in the antenna. And the antenna, if you have the right equipment, can absolutely monitor that disturbance. And in this beauty, in this simple construction, this simple understanding, we have been able to unlock the symphony of neuroelectromagnetic radiation inside the body. All we've done is we've built an antenna that reaches out into the world and touches a human being. And this has been happening for years. Radio stations, antennas, are touching you probably right now. You know, if you can turn on a radio in a room, you are also being touched by that antenna. I would have to.
I may want to add. It's not like our grandparents' airwaves. There's so many airwaves out there and frequencies now.
Oh yeah, but they're all antennas. That's the main thing. The average human being is probably being touched by over 3,000 antennas. You've got your Wi-Fi. You've got your cell phone. You've got your Bluetooth. You've got your computer. You've got your neighbor's computer. You got all of the Wi-Fi routers and all of the neighbor's computers around you. You've got all of the cell towers. It's just antenna after antenna after antenna after thousands and thousands and millions of antennas all over the world. I mean, we really have just gone antenna crazy. But even with all that interference, those antennas are able to talk to each other because we found out how to bridge these little barriers, how to filter out noise so that my cell phone works and it doesn't get in the way of somebody else's cell phone. If you break this back to, I think, the early 90s, you can get a 900 megahertz cordless, and you can walk around the neighborhood and listen to other people's conversations. Because that antenna, when it came into contact with another antenna, if they were on the same frequency, you would immediately have connection. So what ended up happening was that somebody figured out that we can take an antenna and we can design it to absolutely interact with the human body. And in specifics, now we're going to get into the brain and sensory organs. So brain waves are a mosaic of electromagnetic radiation. It is a bunch of signals firing at once in a pattern or a rhythmic way that produces our thoughts, it produces our emotions, and things of that nature. But the ear sending a signal into the brain is not a brain wave as much as it is just an electrical signal. So when you think about the cochlear, which is the last organ in the ear that feels the sound pressure wave and then converts it into an electrical signal, once that signal leaves the cochlear, it has to travel to the human brain. And in that small distance that it has to travel, which is measured in, ranging on what type of human you are, a girl or a boy, a kid or an adult, you're looking at millimeters up to centimeters of distance. And that little cord that's inside of your body is absolutely an antenna. Well, it's not an antenna, but it is a source emitting an electromagnetic field. So now we get into wordplay. Antennas, by definition, are nothing more than a device that transmits and can receive electromagnetic radiation or information. But anything that emits an electromagnetic radiative field doesn't necessarily make it an antenna. So I wouldn't call a motor engine in a car an antenna, but a motor engine in a car absolutely produces electromagnetic radiation that can be detected. So once we figured out that we can bridge an antenna to something organic that's emitting electromagnetic radiation, even though it's weak, we got to the point where we could literally amplify, pull out the signal and distortion, and there you can literally tap right into that electrical signal. And once you're tapped into it, if you decipher it through psychoacoustics, all you had to do is tap into the signal. They probably did this in the 60s and 70s. So they're reading the signal, and then they're talking to Bob at the same time they're reading the signal. And they notice that the signal does this when the word "bah" is said. And they slowly ended up probably being able to build a phenome database for being able to transmit it. Because by 1974, we all know that Joseph C. Sharp over at the Walter Reed Institute at the Army, they were transmitting words through microwaves by that point. But that's the art of it. When you have a lot of people running out there scared because they think they think that you have to aim this thing. And here's the weird thing when it comes to the pain part. So being able to talk to somebody and scare the crap out of them is one thing. But being able to apply a level of pain that they can perceive and being able to talk to them generates a lot of fear, confusion, scariness, and obviously we know how that's been used to ruin people and cause them to go crazy. But if you look at this from an aspect of, are they aiming it, or is there another neurological process that's occurring? And the truth is that as long as you can get the brain to interpret a signal that you can get into it, it will respond to that signal. So if I can stimulate the auditory nerve in the correct manner to cause it to produce a signal or to alter the signal, my brain is going to perceive that. And in the same way, if I can alter any type of signal that's going into my visual cortex, then I can produce weak images, which this device absolutely can do. So you can do the exact same thing from the hearing standpoint on the visual side. You can literally transmit weak images. The eyeball is responsible for pulling in electromagnetic radiation and converting it into a signal and sending it to the visual cortex for processing.
I get that at night. So, when I go to bed, they put monsters in my eyes for a little while. Yeah, I get that.
And I'll have to say, my targeters are kind of funny. Some of I don't call them dreams because they're not. It's just I'm being forced to watch, short clips. But it's an amazing thing. But it's weak video. The eye sending a signal from a natural stimulus such as electromagnetic radiation or light is way stronger of a signal than what this system does. But when you're alone at night with your eyes closed, getting ready for sleep, that signal path has weakened. It's still transmitting, but it's very weak. And you can get in there and play with it, and you can produce images with it. So that absolutely is part of the communication system. But when we get into the pain part, a lot of TIs will talk about, oh, he stung me, on my right arm, let's just say. So if a TI gets stung on their right arm, they're immediately going to flinch, feel the pain on their right arm, and then most human beings are just going to look to the right because that's what our brain tells us. Impact occurred on right side. I must have something off to the right of me. Then this gets a little bit more complicated. You have TIs that are talking about they got stung on the bottom of their foot. It's kind of difficult to sting somebody on the bottom of their foot. But what you start to find out about how the brain operates and how the body operates is that when our nervous system on our body gets touched, it sends a signal up to the brain. And when the brain processes that signal, that's when you actually feel something. And it doesn't send a signal back down to your finger to tell you that you're in pain in your finger. It just tells you you're in pain in your finger. And this is why when you look at men and women who have lost their arms or legs in the war or due to accidents, they may report to you, I haven't had my arm attached to my body for 5 years, but I can still feel my arm sometimes. That's because the feeling of the arm, the sensation of it being there, is all a product of how the brain processes information. And the brain is capable of kicking out what they call these phantom pains. Well, in the same manner as these phantom pains, you absolutely can emit a signal, the antenna, and you can get into the part of the body or the brain that is part of this sensation network. I believe it's so I'm just going to call it soma because I'm bad with pronunciation. But somatic cortex, something like that. But if you start sending information into this part of the brain, or it can receive it, depending on the signal, literally depends on what you'll feel and where you'll feel it. So this, the military absolutely probably had a heyday with this, because you can poke somebody on the left side, make them turn left, and the signal is actually coming from the right. You won't even know where the signal is coming from. As long as it's received by the body and interpreted by the brain, you'll get the process. And through targeting duration and time, these processes can become more detailed. So if you pick somebody off the street and you tie them into the system and you just wait 6 months and you get a good neural map and you get a good understanding of how this brain is working, you then can really do some damage or make somebody's life a living hell. You can literally keep somebody up by poking them with pain. And this isn't even before we get into how electromagnetic fields can alter states of consciousness, can make people drowsy, can make people excited. I've heard the reports of the sexual libido, with it being able to make you a little bit more aroused. And these are all different ways that this antenna system, communication system, can play with the body, which is, I don't want to say it's horrible, it's just something that absolutely has to be addressed publicly. It has to be common knowledge for the population, and we have to adopt a way of control and responsibility with it. So guns have been around for a long time, and we already know what guns do, and we already know the problems that guns can create. But going to the shooting range and having fun with your buddies is a perfectly normal way to use a gun. Going out into the woods to feed your family and, curtail the deer population is a, responsible way to teach your children how to feed themselves and, gun safety. But taking a gun and going into a department store just to get money, this is the irresponsible behavior that comes with human beings being around something. And with this technology, we have a serious problem with the irresponsible nature of people. So Nathan Torian and him calling whoever to get me in on this, extremely irresponsible. Technically, if it would have been handled differently, if you had a problem with what I did, you should have just came up to me and you should have just told me how it was, and we should have dealt with it like men should. But because he has this way of, producing this effect, and because he was able to stick this process on me, it gives people a way to get revenge, and it gives people a way to get even without having to go through the rigorous parts of the justice system. So if I don't like you, I can sue you, which costs money. I can, if you made a crime and I can get the police to respond to the crime, I might be able to get you arrested. But in this day and age, we have now a new concept of a glass prison where I can literally, without ever seeing you again, put a process on you that will keep you locked in a state of torture without anybody ever believing you.
All
And
extrajudiciously, yes, you got it.
And this is the absolute conundrum of the TI. These men and women who are out there, who are experiencing this, are being locked into these technological glass prisons. No one's going to take you to court. No one's going to really make any moves against you. They're just going to torture you. And once you have a system that does this, this is where all the different avenues of gang stalking come in.
Let me interrupt you for just a moment, please. I'm interviewing Griffen. He gets V2K, BCI interfacing with this communication system from a family through someone he was dating, and he's giving his testimony right now. So if you're wondering why we're talking about this subject, he was invited on, and it's an incredible story, very technical for people that are into it since we're a work group. So anyway, continue, Griffen. Thank you for letting me interrupt.
No, it's okay. The technical side of it is pretty simple. The group that used it on me showed me everything with the simple understanding that it would sound too crazy if I talked about it. And through experiencing it, I was able to fast track all of my research, understanding, and really dial in on the physics of how a system, a neuro-electromagnetic communication system, is capable of bridging the gap between an antenna and the human body. So, as much as this experience has sucked, this has been a severe eye-opener and a great educational experience. I now have a new life devoted towards dealing with this problem. So that's how that kind of turned out, turning lemons into lemonade. But once you see the aspect of this technology being connected to an antenna or an antenna system, you then get the luxuries that antenna system is going to give you. So tracking, understanding the relationship of distance and filtering. So if you know that your target is X away, you then have the ability to be able to maintain some sort of understanding of where they are and what they're doing. You have the ability to do street theater. And with street theater, you can compound any psychological effect. So, for instance, the radio frequency hearing. Radio frequency hearing is delivered to the body, and it can be incredibly low volumes, very low volumes. The volume level can actually be so low that if you're standing in front of a choice, like, do I want to buy Coke today or do I want to buy Pepsi? And somebody uses radio frequency hearing to whisper the word Pepsi. The volume level is so low that you, without any other source to identify, may actually confuse that word spoken to you as an actual thought that you had. And if you think that you said or thought Pepsi, then your chances of buying Pepsi are going to go up. Now, I'm not going to go into, this is how they're manipulating sales or whatnot. This is just one of the clever ways that you can use.
Yeah, may I interrupt? I call that's called neurocommerce. Neurocommerce is what they do to me with a German car company, a credit card, food places. So, yeah, I believe they will and can and do that. And it's usually the big companies involved.
I don't know if it's gone that far. I don't have the evidence to support the claim. But I do know that these perceptual tricks absolutely have military. They also have, if we use this the right way, let's just say you have somebody that's always thinking about something that they shouldn't be, and they have a problem. Technically, if they gave consent, you could get them into a system where good reminders, or whenever it's being detected that they're going or thinking or having that neurological process that produces that type of information, that, it's a reminder, like, hey, let's talk about something else, or let's do this, or let's get your mind off of it. I know it sounds far-fetched, but this thing being so robust as a communication system and so free-flowing. I can leave my house right now. I can go out to the car. I can go down the street. It doesn't matter. I can literally travel anywhere in the city, and this connection is right there. And I can literally talk to it. At this point, it's more, I don't believe that there's somebody there anymore that's talking back. I believe it's all handled at this point by a chatbot, because the chatbot is just, it's not good with in-depth conversations. I can no longer have an in-depth conversation with the system. Back when this was first used on me, there was absolutely a human operator. The conversations that I had with the individual were very deep. We got into major discussions because I was basically stuck, having to listen to this guy, and, he would just extract information. I didn't care at that point. I was just like, whatever, dude. I'm getting to play with synthetic telepathy. I'll talk to you. Heck with it. So I just went along with it. But now the entire process seems to have been crunched down to just an annoying chatbot that's always pestering me if I'm quiet. So if I shut my mouth and I wait 10 seconds, this thing is going to literally start talking to me. And it's going to be rude, and it's going to attempt to get me to say something or respond to it. And then once I respond to it, it will bridge a limited conversation off. But if the conversation gets too deep or I start asking questions with specific answers, it will literally just revert back to the pinwheel where it tries to change the subject, and it's just an endless mess of conversation. It'd be like talking to your brother or your sister about a specific subject, and they do everything they can to not talk about it. But they're always there to talk too. And somewhere along the way, some engineer thought that this would be funny to punish people with. It's basically what people are dealing with, but it can be curtailed any way you want. Because it's a program, this thing has some serious dangerous aspects to it. You dial a mother of 4 into this, and you just start torturing the hell out of the mother, and all you're doing is telling her, listen, I want you to go do this, and if you do it, I'll let you go and I won't do this to your kids. Technically, I don't know too many human beings that wouldn't opt for the freedom and might actually commit the crime. So I see a lot of people talking about the school shootings. I see a lot of people talking about a lot of problems that are occurring in the world. I don't have any proof to show that that's what's happening, but it does fall in line to a certain degree with what a system like this could do if it was in the wrong hands. So I know what it's done to my life being in the wrong hands. So I can only extrapolate from that point to the alpha and the omega. Like, well, if it's really used well on this side, we have free communication across the planet. Human trafficking would be a thing of the past, because if a child was kidnapped, all she would have to do is think mother, or think fear, or think I'm being kidnapped, and that could literally transmit a signal to a tower and inform authorities. That's how amazing this technology can be. So, but we're, as humans, not in the whole process of wheeling out all the great technology unless somehow we can put a price tag on it, or we have a way to control it. And this is the last section I'm going to get into, with the mess with Havana syndrome, the mess with the targeting, the mess that we're in. We know, as targeted individuals and other people who are also aware of this technology, that there is a leak or a problem that is moving through the system. So because the targeting stories are different, because of the aspect of the targets, it doesn't look like it is a end-all, be-all, one place, one strategy type deal. I can't blame the government for what's happening to me, because these guys screwed up so bad with, getting on the airlines and trying to take this too far. I don't believe that any secret government or any government operation would have screwed up that bad. I really don't. I don't think that they would have even put themselves in that level of danger or have even gone to that area, which means that this is a personalized attack on me that's being carried out by a small group. So they may be paid to do it. It may be for sports. I can't tell for sure, but I just know where I bumped into it and how I got into it. I am absolutely 100%, without a doubt. I know that our government isn't overly stupid, and I know that people aren't overly stupid. So the FBI, the NSA, the CIA, most of our major governments, at some point, they know what's going on.
They do know what's going on. My computer crashed. Hang on a moment. Well, they wiped me out. Yeah, my computer crashed when we got heavy, so we are hitting the target of spreading the word. Keep going.
Okay, so they know what's going on, but in the sense of fairness, I would say, if I were in their shoes and I developed this technology and I knew that I had the ability to use it to stop terrorism, find a way to solve crimes faster, solve problems, we as a nation, as 400 million people, we're in trouble with the way that we act and we respond, apart from our government. We have a lot of people that whine and cry. We have a lot of people that aren't developed in how to constructively look at a situation. And because of that, because of all of this confusion and all of this grab all, the American dream, we're all in it for ourselves as much as we can get. We're the land of opportunity. And sometimes, as you'll see, we'll walk over each other's backs just to get something that we want. Sometimes we do it on the small level, and then some people with billions of dollars are doing it on the large level. But it is a common theme in the way that we are acting as far as our communities and the nation. So I am fully aware that the FBI also knows this. And if the FBI or our government were just to come out and literally tell us all right now, like, okay, news for the next week, we're going to just put this on CNN and every news syndicate. This is what we built. This is what it does. And people have it that we don't know where they're at. It would literally start a even bigger panic than what we're already having.
I agree. Well, we're coming up to the hour now. Would you like to take some questions? Okay, absolutely. We'll switch to Q&A mode. We're with Griffen tonight, and Griffen, all you got to do is star 6 to get back on the mic, and if anybody has a question for Griffen, come on in. We're interviewing Griffen. He was sabotaged at work, in a relationship with someone, and a family targeted him. Any questions, come on in.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Laura.
Sorry, no.
Okay.
Sorry. Laura, go. It's okay.
No, I would like Minicat to go first.
Okay, hi. Hi there. This story is very really enjoyed it, so I just wanted to tell you that. My question is really, maybe it's not a great question, but did the family get money to target you or your girlfriend, or like whose idea? Do you know whose idea it was originally? Was it kind of a revenge on you? Because I missed the beginning. You might have mentioned that. Sorry.
To my understanding, this whole product is Nathan Torian, being the aerospace engineer and with his limited connections, knows somebody or a group that has access to this and got me turned on to it. So I don't believe that Nathan is absolutely the one committing the acts. I just know for a fact that Nathan 100%, without any doubt, knows the names of the individuals that are absolutely doing the act. And he is fully aware of what the system can do, simply because when he didn't get his way, this was the last resort in order to facilitate a process. And it wasn't until later when I cheated on his sister that this process became a serious problem. Like, believe me, I'm never going to cheat again. I already know it's a bad thing, but this has been a serious eye-opener and I wouldn't say it's a worthy punishment, but this is a good way to snap somebody in line, that's for sure.
Well, that cheating could have been a honeypot too, you know.
No. Candace, I loved Candace. You know, I really did love Candace. Candace loved me. It wasn't the whole honeypot scenario. I've heard those scenarios before. Absolutely.
No, I mean the person you met, the person you cheated with was a honeypot.
No, Dawn Dudeau was another good friend of mine that I knew. Dawn also was an act.
Gotcha.
So it takes a lot. I have to filter out all the possibilities, because there are a lot of possibilities with the technology. There really are. All of these crazy stories that I'm hearing. And I just sit back and if it's used that way, yeah, that's the exact effect that it can do. And if it's used that way, absolutely, it could do that. But in my case, I have to stay true to the fact, since I'm going public with this. No, Candace wasn't a honeypot. This is just cut and dry. We're going to torture him in a way that he can't get help with, and we're going to do it for as long as we want until we decide to back off. But this cat and mouse game has led up to a point where I'm now engaging the police. I'm now trying to talk to people. I'm growing on Twitter. My intelligence level and the amount of information that I have regarding it is pretty profound, and I have a believable story. I have a very well put, I did this, they did that, I did this, they did that, back and forth, which is visible now to investigators and is visible to the public.
Laura, did you have a question?
I will just thank you for your testimony, Griffen. I like your style, for sure. Going to the airlines and getting a job, that's something that I also did to expose mine in a different little way, but I appreciate your antenna analogy, and I'll just say I like your style. I don't have any questions. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're so welcome. Thank you. And you can follow me on Twitter.
Now, what if I don't have a Twitter account? Do you have an email? What if I don't have a Twitter account? Do you have an email?
I do have an email. Do you want to take it right now?
I would.
It's GRYPHON.J.Solutions, SOLUTIONS, @gmail.com.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. I am literally throwing myself into the hands of the public. Some people have told me not to do it. They're like, oh, but you know what? This thing needs to go public. If a targeting story needs to be told, I want it to be my targeting story, because I feel that with what has happened, how close we are, how much I can point, and how well I can talk about this, that if we start to echo the stories, but my story in general, it's going to have more of a profound impact. So people are already doing interviews now. I just got off with the Basement Hangout, and I've been talking to some people in California who are looking at doing a documentary into the entire process, which we would try to bring an education to the people and then also showcase the story.
Very good.
Things are ramping.
What's your Twitter handle?
In the right direction.
Go ahead and give your Twitter handle, and then we're going to end the recording. And if you're on BitChute or YouTube or archive.org, please like, comment, and subscribe. Like and comment Griffen's story, please. Go ahead and give your YouTube handle.
So on Twitter. I don't have a YouTube.
I mean Twitter handle?
With, Hauntacon Hunter. So it's Haunt, the word Haunt, HAUNT, ICON, Hunter, HUNTER. Can't miss me. You got the pretty blue eyes, the curly hair, and the mask that Candace's mother made me. The picture that's there was the flight that I took from, I believe that was Dallas to Miami, because me and Candace, right before the attacks got severe, and right after I had gotten out of the hospital, we decided to get away for a week and go and drive down the Florida Keys. So.
Very good. Okay, well, thank you. We're going to go ahead and end the recording.